What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today we are looking at a boss killing build for Lepic. Now, you might be wondering why the hell are we looking at a boss killing build for Lepic now? That's because Lepic can do this to Gluttony now, and that's because during the week we saw a patch that came out, or a hotfix, that now allows you to solo queue into Gluttony as well as Molten Fortress. Now, Gluttony happens to be weak to fire, so Lepic is the perfect Descendant to, give him a good old whooping and show him your balls. It's no secret, at least I don't think so, but Lepic's actually my favorite Descendant. I think there's a lot of better Descendants than him in terms of like power level and stuff, but Lepic was the first out of the original three that I picked. It was the first ultimate Descendant that I had, and was also the first Descendant that I felt that I had a really sick build for. And this was back in the preseason when everybody was lighting up the Void Intercept bosses with fucking overkill and trying to see how fast they could kill Devourer. So this build isn't just good at killing Gluttony, it actually works really well on all of the Void Intercept bosses up to and including Swamp Walker, and you can put all of those Void Intercept bosses on farm, and basically all the stuff that you need from them, whether it's external components or fucking Transcendent mods or whatever, can be obtained, I would say, relatively easily. Now, before we actually dive into the build itself, and of course we're going to talk external components and reactors and everything, I do also just want to, answer the question of whether this build is for you. Now, one thing that I'm sure I'm going to get comments about is you're going to see that this is an extremely glass cannon build. And that's the way that I choose to run it. Now, bear in mind, I have multiple hours on Lepic. Multiple might be selling it short, to be fair. And therefore, I've gotten very used to this style of play. And especially in solo situations, if you're going up against Void Intercept bosses, it doesn't necessarily matter if you die once or twice, because the point is it's actually offering you a free reset of your overkill cannon. And that's certainly a strategy that you can also use on Gluttony, for example, like in the footage that you were seeing earlier. So it is not tough, and you are going to have to be fast on your feet, but it is high risk, high reward gameplay. And that's kind of like the way I want to run Lepic. So if this is a little bit too fucking paper thin for you in the survivability department, absolutely think about swapping up one or two of the damage mods, and that would give you a little bit more survivability, a bit more HP, but of course you'd be sacrificing, damage. That being said, let's go ahead and dive in. So just quickly, just to reiterate, the point is that we are using Lepic to be able to use overkill. Overkill is his fourth ability. It's the arm cannon, the Mega Man cannon, and so this is what we're going to focus on empowering to deal the most damage possible. Now, this is a crit centric build, so we are going to build Lepic crit, and I don't want to hear any shit about non-crit Lepic. There is no reason for you to do that. Crit Lepic is much better than non-crit Lepic, and it's a hill that I'll fucking die on. The basic point is, yes, he does not have high base crit, but crit offers so much additional damage for you in terms of like when one of your overkill balls, or two or three or four of them crit, that's massive amounts of fucking damage on the table. And then of course the burns that are happening after the ball is ticking there can also crit, and that's just too much damage to fucking, leave off the table. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in and let's start putting it together. Now, firstly, as I said, we're going to build crit centric, right? So we're going to go for all of the crit mods. So that means we're going to go skill insight. 1 second. We're going to go skill insight, which gives us skill critical hit rate of 115, which is huge. Then we are going to go concentration. This is going to give us skill critical hit damage of 115%. And then we're going to go for the two purple mods, which also give us crit. So that would be a mod by the name of Frontlines. That gives us critical hit damage as well as critical hit rate. And then another one called Emergency Measures, which gives us the same thing, just like in reverse. So this gives us more crit hit rate and less crit hit damage, so basically the opposite of Frontlines. Now that's all of our crit, sort of like together. So now if we look at our crit rate, we can see that we're sitting at just over 50%. Now, this is also because I have crit on my reactor, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the point is we're halfway to 100, right? So this means 1 out of every 2 hits statistically should be critting or will crit or whatever. But this is a really, really good rating for us to be, and this is the reason why we build crit. 50% is 50%. The shit's good. Then now we need to start fleshing out the damage a little bit. Now, because we are playing this in almost like a, you know, one and done, one pump chump. So we're going one rotation of overkill to pretty much kill everything, and then if whatever we are trying to kill with overkill fucking survives, we just let it kill us or go jump off the edge and come back with a full arm cannon. The point is that we can actually use a mod called maximize power, because it has a massive drawback, right? It increases your skill cooldowns by 50%, but it gives you a huge amount of skill power modifier, 96.1% to be exact. So this is a really, really good mod for us to use. We don't really care about the downside of it. It's fine. We'll work around it. Now we can also take a mod called Fire Specialist, this guy over here, and that's going to empower our fire damage, which of course overkill is a giant ball or giant balls of fire, so it's really good for us. Next, we're going to focus on the dot damage that comes after the initial hit of the ball. So of course you get a massive amount of damage up front when the balls hit the enemy, but then you also get a burn that happens afterwards, and we want that burn to last as long as possible so we can get additional fire ticks off of it, because essentially you can have multiples of these overlaying each other. So every ball that hits has its own set of ticks of damage that happens, so multiples on them is why you see this fucking melt effect that happens as soon as you get a bunch of your balls on, you know, the boss's chest. So we're going to go with something called skill extension. This gives us skill duration of 36.5%, which is good. And we're going to double down on that shit by also taking maximize duration. So if I just do this, maximize duration, there she is. So this is skill duration plus 40%. And we do take a slight skill power modifier deficit there of 21.1%, but that's okay. So now we have a pretty decent setup here. Now, the next mod I'm going to tell you to put in is, in my opinion, a flex slot. This could be if you feel like the build is a little bit too flimsy and you want to give yourself a little bit more survivability. This is a great place for you to snap some fucking HP in or something like that. For me, what I like to do is I like to use a mod called skill cost. Okay. Now, or rather strong mentality, but it affects skill cost. I apologize. So strong mentality says that your skill cost is less than, minus by 15.2%. Now, it's important for you to understand that there's a big difference, for example, to how his fourth ability works compared to someone like Freyna. Although in the framework of it, it's kind of like the same thing. You activate the ability, it takes some stats from the weapon that you have in your hands, and or some, let's say, some characteristics of the weapon that you have in your hands, and then essentially becomes a new weapon with its own effects and everything like that. Now, in Freyna's case, this becomes a machine gun, and it has a mag size, and once that mag is depleted or the time runs out, your skill is over. In the case of Lepic, what happens is you get the arm cannon, and then this arm cannon shoots out these balls. Now, these balls, the amount of them that you can shoot is dependent on how much MP you have. You need as much MP as possible, or you need to make your MP work for you as much as possible so you can get the maximum amount of balls out. Now, with this build that we're building here and with my exact setup, I can get 17 of these shots off. And the more of these you can get off, obviously, I think it goes without saying, but the more your raw damage is. So you want to get as many as possible. Now, I don't know what the upper limit is. I haven't really checked to see. It's been a while since I've looked and even saw people playing Lepic or making builds for Lepic. I think you could maybe get more than 17 if you shuffle some mods around and stuff and maybe have better gear, like I'll show you my external components. But 17 is good. And all of the footage that you're seeing is obviously me playing this. So, I mean, 17 fucking kicks a hole through the moon. So, it's all good. So, strong mentality is just going to make your mana last a little bit longer because each bullet consumes MP. You can see it right here on the skill. It says continuous MP cost 30 and then goes down by a little bit by 29.9 because of the skill cost. But the point is that this will make us actually, get more shots out. At least for me, I think it translates into 2 additional shots, if I remember the last time I tested it. Okay. And 2 might not sound like a lot, but 2 might be the difference between a boss surviving and going into rage and basically not. The last mod is, I would say, pretty necessary to put in, and that is Dangerous Ambush. The reason for this being is that when you're landing an attack on an enemy that's not targeting you, you get a bonus, right? But if you're going up against Void Intercept bosses, they're going to be targeting you, so you're not getting this bonus. However, once you knock them down, that is when you're going to see your damage jump through the roof. And that is because you're getting the second effect, which says on skill attack against an immobilized enemy, skill power plus 49.8%. And so it's in your best interest to figure out where to shoot a Void Intercept bosses. They all have spots. It's usually in the chest. They all have spots where you can hit them, which cause them to go into this immobilized state. And that's when you can really capitalize on some sick ass damage. Because if you get them to fall down, then of course you don't miss your shots. And then you have all of your balls on the boss's face and basically melting him. So this works really well. So this is the setup right there. And then of course, guys, what would the build be without the right Transcendent mod? And that is of course Firearms Master, or just Firearm Master. This of course means that this is an ultimate Lepic build, which I guess maybe I should have said at the start, so I really do apologize if I've kept you captivated all this time. But yes, you need this boss for it, you need this mod for it to work. And that's because of how this interacts with your fourth ability. So it says reloading weapon increases skill range, okay, which means the size, and then changing weapon increases skill power. So you don't have to worry about any weird shenanigans and swapping weapons before you engage your fourth. When you press your fourth ability, whether it's button 4 or whatever you use to engage that, changing into the overkill cannon is considered reloading as well as changing a weapon. So both of these effects proc. So that's really good, and that's why this works so well. Now, the one other thing that you also have to bear in mind, and I'll have some footage playing in the background just to show you the standard rotation that you should be doing, is you should of course also be using overclock. So the point is, what you do is when you're ready to go, or a little bit beforehand, you press 2 to hit your overclock, and then you press 4, and as soon as you press 4, you roll. When you roll, you also cancel out that whole arm priming, holding it up in the air fucking animation, and you get another additional shot basically out, because that would have been time wasted as the timer of your overclock ticks down. So that's it. That's the road. You start the fight. When the boss looks like he wants to die, you go 2 and then 4, duck roll, and fucking hold in the button and melt the boss down. That's pretty much it. So again, that's the build right there. Now, when we then look at weapons, we need a good weapon in our hands that has specific mods on it that allow us to have some of those characteristics pass over to the overkill cannon. This works very similarly to Freyna, and that means that there are certain things that transfer over from the weapon and certain things that don't. So when you build a weapon for Freyna, you do it very similarly for Lepic. And that means that Perforator, or rather Impact Rounds weapons, is the perfect weapon for this particular build. And that's because sharp precision shot on these weapons is slightly better on impact than it is on any other weapon type. That means that when you see there it says fire rate minus 20% while pulling the trigger, fire rate plus 4, recoil minus 5, firearm attack plus 6 every 0.4 seconds. On other weapon types, it's 0.5 seconds. So it's a very, very slight, minuscule difference, but it matters if you want to go, let's say, you know, best in slot, best type thing. So this will allow you to essentially spin out balls faster. And this is the standard setup that you do here. So you do 2 ammo mods, okay, of course, and then you do fire rate up and you do sharp precision shot. It's important for you to have a high fire rate, because the higher your fire rate, the faster you can shoot the balls out. You can test this very easily by taking a weapon with no fire rate mods on, and you'll see that you will actually shoot the balls super slow. And what sharp precision shot is also going to do for you is it's going to start speeding you up to the point where your balls are flying out of you like super fast. So again, very important that you hold the trigger in and don't let go until the boss dies or until your gun's empty and you hear click. So that's basically the setup for the weapon. You can, technically speaking, use any weapon in the game as long as it has these 4 mods on. I use Perforator because it's an impact weapon and because I have this set up as a stat stick for some other characters as well. But the point is, you can use any weapon in the game as long as you have these mods on. That's it, because that's what it inherits from the weapon. Next, let's quickly just talk Reactor as well as external components. My Reactor, of course, you have to use burning mechanics because you want fire and tech, and that's of course this Reactor. It's conveniently the same one that Izamo uses, for example. Now, your substats on here absolutely matter, and I, at this point in time, would probably fucking sell a kidney for a golden damage to Colossus and crit damage. That is your guard roll for this particular build of Lepic. You want golden crit hit damage and you want golden damage to Colossus. If you get one of those, or even if it's purple damage to Colossus and golden fucking crit, or vice versa or something like that, you are sitting pretty. In all of the 1,700 hours that I've been playing this game, I have never gotten that to roll. The closest I've gotten it to roll is a blue roll. So if you get something like that, you are just, you know, obviously way more luckier than I am. And you need to tell me what your secret is. However, this that I have here is also not a bad roll. It would be better if I had skill critical hit damage and maybe tech skill power, which I also don't have. But for what this is pretty decent. It gives me a little bit of additional critical hit rate, and because this is a critical, hit build, that's okay. But you want critical hit damage, and then either tech or Colossus or something like that. That's going to be your highest damage, push out essentially. Then in terms of your external components, again, I warned you guys, this thing is paper thin. It's fucking glass cannon deluxe. I run Slayer. So Slayer does not have great rolls for survivability. You can see essentially that my HP is 2,695. I mean, if the boss looks at you, you're gonna fucking die. It is what it is. But again, you've seen the footage in the background. You've seen me killing these bosses and stuff. Yes, every once in a while you might catch a fucking stray and die, but it is what it is. The survivability mods on Slayer is not great, but Slayer has this skill power plus 26.1 on there, which is just too good not to have on. Yes, it also has skill cost plus 15%, which is not great because that means your balls cost more expensive, but the skill power plus 26.1 is just too good to not take. It is imperative that you get max MP on your sensor. You have to have that. That is the only thing that I can tell you that not having that on will make this build basically not work. And you're going to struggle to get a decent amount of those overkill shots out. You can see that my MP is just under 400. I'm sitting at 384. If I had a golden roll on here, I could get maybe close to 400. But that wouldn't necessarily translate into another shot for me. Maybe with MP recovery in combat, I could regenerate enough MP to get another shot out. But I think I'd still be sitting at 17. But I mean, it could be 18, right? I would only know that if I got a better drop. So that also, by the way, would be a really good thing. You need to farm Pyromancer for this shit. But if you can get golden max MP and golden MP recovery in combat, that's also like a sick ass sensor for you for this particular build in Lepic. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I've covered most of it. I'm not going to talk about things like inversion reinforcement and stuff. There are some nodes in there that can also give you more damage, of course, but kind of have to be like close to at least I think level 15 or 20, and I don't know how many of you are. And then the other way that you can absolutely juice more power out of this is obviously to upgrade your reactor. The more points you get in, up to 5, also gives you more skill power overall, and skill power translates into raw damage for you, and makes your balls bigger and stronger and fucking hit harder. So that's it. But that's it for the build. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I appreciate all the support on all of the First Descendant content. It's been fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying the game. I hope you're enjoying your holidays. And if this is the last video of me that you see before then, Merry Christmas if you celebrate, and good luck. Have fun with your family. And as always, fucking cheers.